Oh, very good.
The first time I've been filmed today.
Good line.
We have selfies with you.
So you tell me, Adam, when
That's fine.
it's good to go.
Yep, it's good to go.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you very much indeed for giving up your Saturday to be here, and I hope I can give some help too. I don't know what was said in an earlier presentation this morning, so I was saying to somebody at lunch, I hope to goodness that I won't be cutting across what's already been said. I hope it'll be complimentary rather than subversive. Anyway, let's try the following. Also saying at lunch that Lectio Divina, for me, and I think for some other people, is a bit of a recent discovery. I joined the monastery in 1961, and we didn't talk about, we weren't told about or weren't aware of Lectio Divina. We were brought up on what's called spiritual reading. And if you take the analogy of coffee, it's not the same thing. Coffee can go into real coffee and instant. Well, we had spiritual reading rather than Lectio Divina, and I personally only came across Lectio Divina towards the end of the 90s when I'd been in the monastery for about 37 years. So, don't quite know how that came about, but it came about. And it's now pretty much the flavour of the month, which is why here you are, and we're all talking about Lectio and so on and so on. So, I do want to wax eloquent about it. I do want to recommend it very, very strongly. But I'm delighted that some people here in the room are not necessarily persuaded of its benefit and perhaps don't even know what it is. So if we just start from a little way back, I'm going to talk first of all about pendulums. Pendulums, one of the things they do, or the main thing they do, is to swing. And there has been quite a swing, because if you go back to Vatican II, let's say, in the immediate wake of Vatican II, things that we typically spoke about were, no particular order, authority, collegiality, liturgy, humane vitae, all sorts of important topics, but notice that everything I've said is an abstract noun, and it's really out there. And there was a huge emphasis, if you like, on the church as a big organisation, the big picture. If you like, it was about the trooping of the colour. So one of those big events, the trooping of the colour. So that's how the pendulum was. And now I think the pendulum has swung, and what you get with Lectio, and also with spiritual direction, is, if you like, pillow talk. So we've gone from the trooping of the colour to pillow talk. And Catholics of a certain generation, okay, we're really into liturgy and this, that and the other, and our contact, let's say, with the Word of God was in the context of the liturgy. So here was a general broadcast by God to all of us, but there wasn't a particular sense of God speaking to me. So when I talk about pillow talk, the flavour of this is different, because if you come at Lectio Divina, you're coming at it with certain suppositions, and the supposition is that this is a communication by the living God, but to me personally. Now that's not the same thing as here's a communication by the living God to all of us, and I'm one of a crowd. It's not the trooping of the colour. This is a thee and me. It's thee and me. That is a different flavour. So, and as I say, it does go hand in hand with the whole thing of spiritual direction. I don't know if you've come across spiritual direction, which is an unfortunate phrase. It seems to imply that one person will direct, i.e. tell another person what to do. It's not that, it's a walking beside. But common to spiritual direction, quote unquote, and Lectio Divina, is this idea that a person, a woman, a man, is invited to a personal relationship with God, and that should be fostered. So the Lectio is God speaking to that person, and then the spiritual direction is helping, if you like, the person to answer that. But those two things, they're very personal. So we're now into upfront, personal, or what I'm calling pillow talk, which is a move away from the trooping the colour. Okay, so I think that's what happens in church history. The pendulum goes like this and then it goes like that. Those two things that I've mentioned, they may feel new. Actually, they're not new. With a bit of history, Lectio Divina is a rediscovery of something which was it just went with the territory in the early church. It was what everybody did. Everybody did. And the business of walking with somebody, spiritual direction we would call it, that also is as old as the hills. So you get the desert fathers who would go and see Abba somebody or Anna somebody else, and they would share their stuff. They'd process their stuff with that person. So we are in an age of not discovery, but of rediscovery. But it's proving very beneficial to many people because it's reminding us of what we've said for a long time that we believe, but perhaps we're now being invited to believe it more vigorously than before. Because why would God want to speak to me? Let's ask that very simple question. Well, the correct theoretical answer is because he loves me. Now this idea that God loves me, there's a line in one of the last of the Psalms, the Lord takes delight in his people. If we just sit with the word delight, the Lord takes delight in his people. If you sit down, and perhaps if you look in a mirror, and say, does the living God delight in me? Is that the right verb? And I think, I'm not sure about delight. Put up with, tolerate, oh Lord, not you again, this sort of thing, but delight. But that's actually what it means. And it's not just God delighting in his people, this great mass of people, but this individual person. You are my beloved son, or beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased. That one-to-one, I delight in you. I'm not oblivious of the warts and things, but I just delight in you. So that can be a little bit of a shock to the system. Do I really believe this? Does the word delight apply? But just let's skip over that for a moment, because if it's the case that God delights in me, then what's going to follow, as sure as eggs, is communication. You cannot have love without communication. It makes no sense whatever. And we've only got to look around us, and we see communication coming out at every pore, so to speak. Think of young people who can often only be separated from their phones by some surgical procedure. They're just communicating like there's no tomorrow. And there was some funny article I read the other day that the average teenager, something, consults his or her phone 5 times every night. I thought, jeepers. You know, when I actually put the light out, that's it. But apparently now I've got to check my phone in case. Actually, I probably do that to see that the Pope's phone. But but it isn't. We just think we can laugh at these people. Say, well, come on, you only saw the person half an hour ago. You're going to see them tomorrow. So. But in a way, it's really heartwarming that young people want to be in communication with each other, and they would say, well, of course I'm phoning him or her because he's my boyfriend, she's my girlfriend, she's my chum, this, that and the other. Communication goes hand in hand with any form of affection, and certainly with love, and the more I love the person, the more I'm going to communicate. Well, that being the case, we can see how much nonsense is spoken when if we're going to start saying to ourselves, yeah, God really loves me, but he doesn't say anything. Or God loves me very much, but he last spoke 2,000 years ago, and it's in this book, and if I really feel the urge, I can go and see what he said 2,000 years ago. That's a travesty. It's an absolute travesty. Now, what we've rediscovered is what the early church and the monastic tradition says, is that God is speaking to us and to me every single day. Every single day. Every single day. The loving God is reaching out to me every single day. In the Rulus and Benedict, he's got some chapters which can sound a bit tedious about what psalms are going to be said when, blah, blah, blah. But what you can hang on is to this, that the first psalm that St. Benedict wants his monks to hear and to recite every single day is, in Roman Catholic computation, Psalm 94, which contains the words, "Oh, that today you would listen to his voice." Now the two words are really key, today and listen. Today and listen. Never mind yesterday, and don't bother about tomorrow, but today is another brilliant day for listening to the God who speaks endlessly. And the whole rule of St. Benedict is shot through with this idea that God is endlessly communicating with us in a number of ways, through events, through people, this, that and the other. He's present there. He's present. He's communicating lovingly. And if you like, a monastery is by definition a listening post. It's there to listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. And the listener in chief is the abbot. They're all about listening. He's the listener in chief. And it's got a nice little application. There's a thing there where St. Benedict says, supposing a visitor comes along, and after a while he points out some defect in the monastery. And St. Benedict says, now what should the abbot do? And he answers, what the abbot should do, he should pay particular attention to that, because God may have sent that person for that very purpose. The whole idea that God is endlessly communicating. Now, one of the ways in which God is endlessly communicating is via Lectio, because the ancients had this very, very powerful sense that the Word of God, which was, if you like, written by God through human agents, is the way par excellence of God communicating with us, which is why they said, we can't think of anything better to do than actually to spend a lot of time sitting with these texts. And the timetable in St. Benedict's time, it's estimated that his monks would have spent about 4 hours a day doing Lectio. Well, that's a mighty allocation of time, mighty. 4 hours a day, why would you want to do that? Well, the St. Benedict's answer is, we want to do that because this is listening to God. So now, what's happened all these years on? Oh, by the way, historically, what happened? That was something which all Christians did. Then, for historical reasons, it seemed to become restricted to what monks did, and now it's sort of come out of the monasteries, and here it is, it's in this room, and it's going around the diocese, and we're back to where we started. We don't set aside 4 hours a day, even in monasteries, but we do say, this is really key stuff, really key. So I'm bringing to it the following assumptions. There is a God. This God loves me to bits and delights in me. And this God, apart from speaking to all of us in general, the trooping of the colour, there's also this pillow talk, that God's speaking to me here and now. Now that is not the same thing really as the old spiritual reading, which is, would you please, brother X, read this improving book so that you can think holy thoughts. It's much more passionate than that. It's much more passionate. And I'm going to offer you a little something which I wrote for the tablet in 2001. This is not blowing my own trumpet, but I looked at it and I thought, am I pleased with what I wrote in 2001? I thought, yeah, actually I think it stood the test of time okay, and it's pretty much what I want to say. The other thing is it's nice and short, which of course appeals especially to Roman Catholics. You can read long books about this, but I would suggest this is a little distillation of the headlines about Lectio. So that is where we are at the moment. And I think the best way I can proceed is just to perhaps to spell out what is there, just to give a bit of a voiceover, and also to add a tiny bit of autobiography. I've indicated that I rediscovered, or discovered, Lectio and spiritual direction pretty much the same time, in, call it, 1997, 1998, something like this, by which time, as I say, I've been in the monastery for about 36, 37 years. So, okay, getting there in the end, yes, we've been brought up on spiritual reading, not on Lectio, and there was no talk really of having a spiritual director. We had heard that some people out there had spiritual directors, but I think we assumed that was something that the Jesuits did. So we can't be doing with that. We can't be doing that. So actually, if you put those things together, the thinking then, this is about formation of people, was that you gave people a grounding in all sorts of things, church history, philosophy, theology, etc., for 4, 5, 6 years. You wound them up like this, ding, 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 a bit like a clockwork, something or other, and then you ordained this being, and off this being went. Off this being went, entirely by himself, by the way. So the whole idea that you're going to be sharing your spiritual journey with somebody else, no, I don't think so. It was a strange world. So we're in a different world, and I'm pleased that we've actually moved. So that's my, I found it personally, I would say life-changing. It made such a profound difference, such a profound difference. And I thought to myself, why does it take me so long to take on board that God would wish to speak to me personally? Why is it taking so long? But I think that's very, very important. And it does go hand in hand, if I may say, with the whole thinking about vocation. I was giving a talk this morning to an A&B vocations group up at work. I'm trying to say to them, please understand that none of us has one vocation. All of us have two vocations. One vocation is, please God, to do something, to bear fruit. That's the what we do. But there's the who we are, that I matter. So if you take the analogy of Our Lady, so if you put yourself in God's shoes, there's God with this problem. How do I get my son into the human race? How do I get my son into the human race? Well, part one of the answer is we actually need a human female person. That's what we need, human female person. He didn't then look around and say, well, of course there are lots of women on the face of the earth, so, take your pick. He absolutely did not say that. He said, only you will do, which is what we mean by Our Lady. Only you will do. Meaning, what I want is one thing, but who you are is absolutely crucial. And this idea of God calling us by name, so we're not just part of some task force, here's a task that needs doing, so, okay, hey, you'll do. But you matter to me. And that whole business of you matter to me underlies all sorts of things, including Lectio. You matter to me. I want to reach out to you, and I want to touch the centre of your being. Okay, how the thing works, if I may say the following things. I've given the example there just to give us a texture or a feel, rather than talk in abstractions, about what it might be like if, for example, you did Lectio on the picture. The one I've chosen in the little article is the Good Samaritan, which of course we know so well. And just to point up some of the features of Lectio. First of all, it goes without saying that Lectio is absolutely not Bible study. Absolutely not Bible study, or history, or archaeology, or any of those excellent disciplines, none of those things. Because if it were those things, I would say, well, here's this story, and it's a man going from Jerusalem to Jericho. Did you know that Jerusalem was X feet above sea level, and Jericho is Y feet below sea level, and it takes, I don't know how long to get from one to the other, and did you know about the Samaritans, and they came in 700, we go into some jolly good, and I can answer questions on Mastermind about this now. But this has got nothing to do with Lectio. Let's just unpick it, and I'm going to have to unpick it slightly quickly because we're pressed for time. Of course, with Lectio you would do this very slowly, but just to indicate how our minds might engage with it. Because in the story, if we count on our fingers the number of characters that appear, if you take of it as like a play really. So, for example, there's the man. The man is going down. from Jerusalem to Jericho. So that's one. Then he falls among brigands. If we call them a corporate person, that's two. And then you get the priest who walks by, that's three. And then you get the Levite who walks past, that's four. Then there's the Samaritan, five. And then, no, don't miss this person. It's not a person, but this being. Because if you are in the middle of nowhere with a half-dead body and you're trying to get it to a particular destination, well, you could pick up the... But guess what? If you've got a donkey, you're in business. I only count the donkey as number 6. Don't knock the donkey. And the number 7, of course, is the innkeeper. So there are 7 people. And at this point I'm going to say, now when we sit with this, we want to resist certain urges in our minds, because I suppose our knee-jerk urge is to identify immediately with the good guy. We like that in stories. I'm the good guy. Or I want to be the good guy. So, boom, I go for the jugular. I want to be like this Samaritan and think beautiful thoughts and go out and help people in need. I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying don't go too quickly, because if I sit down and let my eyes adjust and ask myself the question, which of these 7 people rings the loudest bell, or any bell at all, with me? Or do they all ring some sort of bell? Do they all? So, for example, is it conceivable? That's okay, thanks a lot. Good Samaritan. Is it conceivable that rather than put myself immediately into the shoes, or the would-be shoes, or the wannabe shoes of the good guy, what would happen if I put myself into the shoes of the man who was beaten up? What would happen? So what's happened to the man? He has been beaten up, physically beaten up, and then there he is, he's half dead, the story says, and various people have walked past him. So, okay, have I ever felt, call it battered, by anybody or anything? Have I felt battered? In which case, who springs to mind? Who did the battering? Who battered me? Just, answers on a postcard. Not necessarily physically, of course, because you can batter people a lot without laying hands on them. But do I feel in any sense, have I ever felt in any sense battered? Or has anybody ever seen that I was in a fix and walked past? Have I ever felt any form of abandonment? Or, give it a twist, can I think of any time when perhaps I've battered myself? Because there is such a thing as self-harming, psychological and emotional self-harming. I mean, God knows physical self-harming is not what we want, but there are other variations. Or have I, because Lectio is a bit like a dream and one person can morph into another, have I ever walked past myself? Have I been a priest or a Levite to my own self? Now, once you start thinking like that, various possibilities can spring up. But you think, golly, well, this may sound a bit fanciful, but you see, something now begins to resonate. Now, it can also, we can then pursue the thing, and when I was in a bit of a fix, was there somebody unexpected who turned up and lent a pretty important hand? Because a major point of the story is that the Samaritan, the least likely person, because the Samaritans were heretics and they were pagans, so they were not the good guys. But the not good guy was the solution. Have I ever experienced help from an unlikely source? So, gosh, well, little bell ringing, perhaps. Or has there ever been some donkey equivalent? As I say, the very, very, very understated donkey who actually got this person from here to there. Doesn't say a word, and if it's a dumb beast, but by golly, had it not been there, we'd have been up the creek without the paddle, so on and so on. And then you can just begin, you see what I'm doing, rather than do one guy, he's the good guy, I'm the good guy, you just look at, it's a bit like going into those places which they used to have in fun fairs, where they have a whole lot of mirrors.
Oh, yes.
And you get wide mirrors and long mirrors and this, that, and you stand in front of this one and suddenly you're 10 feet tall and then you're 10 feet wide and then... So if you regard these 7 people as if you like 7 mirrors, what am I seeing in this mirror, that mirror, the other mirror? 7 possible mirrors. What am I seeing? What is... And this is not just playing mental games, because perhaps God is actually saying, well, God is saying something to me. Look, there's something here that I want to bring to your attention. I lovingly want to bring to your attention. It goes without saying, I think, that if we have a thought, almost certainly there's an emotion attached. I don't believe there's such a thing as a thought without an emotion. So, I mean, stuff can come up and you can think, yeah, I did actually feel pretty damn bruised by whatever. And I felt angry then. And you know, when I sit down and think of it, I feel profoundly angry still. Now, the emotion is part of the message. The emotion is part of the message, because the thing we do, and particularly dear to the English, is we operate from the neck upwards. But this is not very Hebrew, because we're invited to think from our necks downwards, with our heart, with our guts, with everything, and to feel the feelings. And a little twist on that, we could feel pretty angry with somebody who did something to me or who failed me in my hour of need. We could feel angry with ourselves. We could want to kick ourselves. We could, of course, feel angry with God. And there I think we mustn't be too English. I would say it's very, very, very important not to be too English. Because if we feel angry with God, we need to articulate that. And not to pretend, my goodness me, if I tell God that, he'll be shocked. I mean, that's just ludicrous. Because God knows exactly how we feel and is waiting for us to understand that he understands that that's how we feel. And God is big enough and ugly enough to have people shout at him. And the Bible's full of people shouting at God. A lot of shouting, especially in the Psalms. So, do you see what I'm getting at is that we can come away from a thing like that and you think, do you know, I'm beginning to see things which I hadn't seen before, and they're to do with my condition, because the living God is speaking to me. And stuff is arising, it's arising. Now that is the stuff that I'm invited then to take to God. So, if you like, Lectio is God speaking to me, and then I can respond, take it to God, that's prayer. If you want to make a distinction between what is Lectio, what is prayer. Lectio is from God to me, prayer is from me to God, if you want to do that, if it helps you. So that is the material. I bring my reality. Apart from anything else, Lectio is something which enables me to connect with my reality. I've realized that this is what I think and what I have been thinking for some time. I realize this is what I feel and probably have been feeling for some time. So it's a way in. The author of the Hebrews says that the Word of God is like a two-edged sword. It gets right in there between wherever and wherever, where no other place can get. And that is what can happen with Lectio. You can find it actually quite a disturbing experience. The stuff is moving. And here's another peculiar thing. You can read this text in 2016, and then if you follow the cycle of the lectionary, it's going to come back in, well, next year, call it, or the year after. And then, but you get a different readout then. You think, how did that happen? How can I have got a different readout now from the readout I got before? The reason is because, of course, I am not exactly the same person now as I was before. I mean, God is the same, quote unquote, but so the relationship is endlessly evolving. Something new is being said, a new word, afresh every morning. It's a bit like you go to the boulangerie. This is not yesterday's baguette. This is today's baguette. Today's baguette. Today's baguette is not the same as yesterday's baguette. So it can be a very empowering thing. So what have I said? I've given a little bit of action replay of something, but to put it in its context, it's based on a mindset. The living God delights in me. He's trying to communicate with me. with me, with me, with me.